I was able to rent them out. They started cash flow. And then I didn't need that second job. And when I was doing it, a lot of my friends looked at me like I was crazy because I had my regular full time 5 day a week job. And then I would work on the weekend. So effectively working 7 days a week. And so I would tell them, like, yeah, if you look at it like from that standpoint, when do you want to work 7 days a week? Of course, 90% of people or more would say that's crazy. You don't want to do that. But if you look at it from a different perspective, I was looking at it like, if I work these 2 days a week, it'll give me the income I need to take care of that additional payment for the renovations until I can cash flow. And so I just thought of it as, would you work 2 days a week to get two rental properties off the ground, rented out, and cash flow?
Welcome, millionaires and future millionaires. You're listening to the Millionaires Unveiled podcast, a show where you'll hear the stories and interviews of everyday millionaires. We'll unveil their decisions, their strategies, and their portfolio allocation. Now to your host, Jace Mattinson.
Welcome back to another episode of the Millionaires Unveiled podcast. This is episode number 411.
This is the podcast where we dive deep into the inspiring stories of self-made millionaires from all walks of life. We are your hosts, Jason Stacy, and each week we uncover the strategies, setbacks, and turning points that led these individuals to financial freedom. Whether you're just starting out or looking to level up your wealth building journey, join us as we share the secrets and wisdom from those who have built their fortunes from the ground up. Get ready to learn, be inspired, and take actionable steps towards your own success.
Listening to the Millionaires Unveiled podcast with my dad, Jace Madison, and my mom, Stacy Madison.
Hope everybody had a great Memorial Day. Definitely has a little bit different meaning for me in this stage of my life, which is great. But I appreciate all those out there who are serving and have served, that continue to protect our freedoms and do the things that are necessary sometimes for us to have a Memorial Day. Today on the show, actually, before we get into that, if you'd like to be on the show, send us an email, millionairesunveiled@gmail.com. We're always looking for new, great, entertaining guests. We've got the summer schedule open, as well as a few slots into the fall here. So looking forward to having some millionaires on the show that can talk to us about their thoughts on their portfolio as it's kind of ridden the waves of tariffs, and might even get a few more crypto kings back in the on the podcast too, as we've seen kind of the run with Bitcoin back up over 100,000 again as well. So that is an interesting asset class to keep an eye on. Today we've got Lance. He's got a net worth about 2.1 million, and he lives in Hawaii, which we talk a lot about, living there and growing up there. And I find it ironic that they just had a large volcanic eruption on the island that he lives on. So it's kind of cool timing to tee this up around the same time. But yeah, most of his wealth is in real estate and the market. So we get into the discussion. He works in the transportation space, and we get into his career journey and all the little different things that he's done. At one point in his life, he was working 7 days a week, no days off, trying to save up and get ahead. And yeah, it's a great story. Great story of grinding to a certain point and then reaping the benefits of that grind and actually stepping back, which I think sometimes some people have a hard time kind of transitioning to. And, we get into how he lives his life now. So it's going to be a great episode with Lance. And without any further delay, let's get right into it with him. Lance, do you want to just give us about your background and what you're up to now?
Yeah, sure. I'm 52 years old. I'll be 52 this year. Um, have a bunch of different income sources, and I've been a big fan of the show for a while, and so I'm just looking forward to sharing my story and maybe providing some useful information for some of your listeners out there. But as far as my background, I was born in on Oahu, on the North Shore of Oahu, and lived there for a few years. Moved over to Maui for a few years. And then my family settled over on the Big Island on the east side, a town called Hilo. And I've been living there for most of my life. When I got older, after school, I got some different jobs, took me back around the islands, made my rounds back around to Kauai and Oahu, and then eventually full circle back to Hilo. And I've been here for probably the past, I don't know, almost 10 years now. I've been back on the Big Island. and just enjoying island life and trying to get to that financial independence status that a lot of people are chasing.
Cool, man. You're probably only the second, maybe third guest from Hawaii, so this is gonna be a fun one. It's a special place that we have in our heart for sure. My wife went to school over there for a little bit, and we love visiting and vacationing there. But before we get into details of life in Hawaii, what's your net worth today?
The last time I checked, it was at just over $2 million, about 2.1.
Okay, cool. And how is the 2.1 broken up?
Well, that was just to quantify that. That was before the huge correction we had after Trump's tariff announcements. I know we're not going to get into politics here, but yeah, my net worth took a little bit of a step back the last couple of weeks, but I'm sure it'll bounce back.
Yeah, how was it, or how is it broken up roughly? We'll call it 2.1 for now.
Yeah, yeah, 2.1 is pretty accurate. I have a mix of different things. When I first got started, I didn't have a lot of knowledge as far as finances go in investment. So I was just doing it like I think a lot of people do, getting information from podcasts and YouTube and things like that. So I started collecting or accumulating a bunch of different accounts. So I have stuff spread out all over the place, although a majority of my investments are in, I guess you would consider more traditional or conservative investments. Most of it in a brokerage account or split between a 401k through my company, which is invested in the Vanguard Total Stock Market. And also have a brokerage account that has it's split between three funds, a total stock market Vanguard account fund, a total international stock market fund, and a REIT, total REIT index fund. Um, and then other than that, I mean, my list gets pretty long. I have M1 accounts where I have a bunch in SCHD. I'm a big fan of SCHD. We can get into that if you want. And then I have my fund money that's also an M1 that I use like for individual stocks. M1 has a fun feature if your listeners aren't aware of, where you can sort of build your own mutual funds. So that was fun for me to do for a while. So I built a couple of mutual funds and you know tried that hat on as a hedge fund manager you know and it was always fun. But small amounts of money for that, and that's pretty much it. Oh, and I'm sorry, and then also some real estate. I do have a couple rental properties that I own that I use as supplemental income as well.
And kind of high level breakdown, how much would you say is in kind of the market versus, I guess, your real estate at this point? Is it split 50-50 or?
It's pretty close to 50-50, yeah.
Okay. And the real estate that you have, do you have a primary residence as well, or do you rent?
No, I have a primary residence. I was blessed when I got the my primary residence. It was when the interest rates were a lot lower than they are now. So I have a just slightly above 2% interest on that. So I still carry a mortgage of the cap where I think I can the math makes more sense to me to have my money in investments going at a above 2% rate than to pay the mortgage. So kind of opposite of the whole Dave Ramsey concept of being debt free. I don't have any debt except for the mortgage. But I think my money does a better job for me working and getting other investments than
Yeah.
paying off the mortgage. That makes sense.
Yeah, for sure. And do you have leverage and loans on the real estate that you have as a rental property or rental properties?
I I do. There's a story behind that too. So I acquired these properties and they were in disrepair. I needed to renovate them to get them to a point where I could rent them out. At the time, this was years ago, I didn't have the money or the income to do it. So I basically got a HELOC on the properties, used the HELOC to fund the renovation, excuse me. And then I took actually a part-time job on the weekends as a waiting tables and bartending at a friend of mine's restaurant. And the money I made on the weekend, just from those 2 days, were enough to pay for the HELOC payments while the renovations were going on. And then after about a year, or a year or two, I got all that squared away. And then they started to, I was able to rent them out. They started to cash flow. And then I didn't need that second job. And when I was doing it, a lot of my friends looked at me like I was crazy because I had my regular full time 5 day a week job, and then I would work on the weekend. So effectively working 7 days a week. And so I would tell them like, yeah, if you look at it like from that standpoint, when you do you want to work 7 days a week? Of course, 90% of people or more would say that's crazy. You don't want to do that. But if you look at it from a different perspective, I was looking at it like if I work these 2 days a week, it'll give me the income I need to take care of that additional payment for the renovations until I can cash flow. And so I just thought of it as would you work 2 days a week to get two rental properties off the ground, rented out and cash flow? So for me, it was a simple equation. It's like, of course, I'll work the 2 extra days. I'll get these rental properties renovated. I'll get them cash flowing, and then I'll have income for the rest of my life. And so it's a little bit of a sacrifice for a couple of years with my days off. But the guys that thought I was crazy back then, I think, have a little different perspective now that it's over and it's done.
How long ago did you do that?
That was before the interest rates took off. So I'd say it's got to be at least 5 years ago I finished that process.
Okay, so you were well into your mid to late 40s when you started that.
Yeah, my journey into getting into investments and trying to, reach that financial independence stage has started really late. I had kids at a young age. And so my 20s were focused on raising my family, raising my kids. So I didn't really get into it until probably into my 30s. Probably my mid 30s is when I first started accumulating knowledge. And I didn't really get rolling until probably I was after 40. So I did have to kind of make some sacrifices, like I said, to accelerate the process. But I think if you have a plan and the discipline to follow the plan, like you're going to accomplish that goal more times than not. And the hard part, I think, for most people is they fail at one of those two things, either having a plan and they end up, taking 2 steps to the left, 2 steps to the right, and you fast forward years and you're in the same spot, or they have a good plan, they just don't have the discipline to follow it, and they like to buy fancy things and spend money, and they never get to that stage of financial independence. So I don't know. For me, it's a little different process, I will say.
These properties, did you find them at an auction or were they listed on the MLS? Just couldn't get a loan on them, or what was the situation there when you got them in the first place?
Yeah. So when I got them, they were like what do you say, like they were in disrepair, so they were very inexpensive to acquire, but they weren't in a livable state, so they basically had to be redone from the floor to the roof. I had to redo the roof, I had to redo the flooring, I had to change countertops, cabinets, pretty much everything, and to make them able to be rented out and livable. So even though getting them was easy, it was the renovating and the expense of the renovation that was kind of the challenge for me, which is why I had to deal with it the way I did.
And did you find them though, like on the MLS or through a connection that you had that you could actually buy them and take title to them, or?
Yeah, actually, I had a friend, family that kind of pointed me in the right direction. So I've been really blessed to have some lucky breaks in that way.
Cool. So they were more or less probably off market then.
Yeah,
Cool.
yeah.
Cool. And are they close to where you live or on another island or?
They're on the same island. They're probably about 30 minutes outside of Hilo, 20, 30 minutes. So yeah, pretty close. So I self-manage them. I looked into property management, but in the beginning, I wasn't sure. I didn't have any contacts in that field, so I just did it myself. And basically, like a lot of the things that I've done with my finance investment is just self-taught. I mean, it's amazing how much information is on the internet if you're persistent enough to look for it. So I was able to create my own leases, figure out how to do background checks. I did, the entire rental process was a little bit of a pain to get started, but like a lot of things, I think it's hard to get started, but once you do and you get some momentum, it's actually not as daunting as people think. So there was quite a bit of knowledge that had to be gained, but once I got that, it's at a point now where it just runs itself. It's truly passive income. I mean, I talk to my tenants. I have great tenants, and so yeah, it's just money that rolls in. And the only thing that worries me is the occasional repair costs, but other than that, it's pretty much just passive income.
How come you stopped it at just two and haven't accumulated more?
Yeah. Co- COVID. So actually, I bought another piece of property, just a vacant lot. And my plan was to build a third, and then a fourth, and then a fifth, and just 10 exit, 20 exit. that kind of thing. If I can make, $1,000 cash flow on one property, then if I have 10, I'll 10x it. So that was my plan. And then I bought a piece of property that I tend to build on. And then COVID happened. So that kind of got put on pause. And then post COVID, the cost of building materials went way up. And then the interest rates have gone way up. And so now when I do the math on how much it'll cost me to build a rental unit in Hawaii and rent it out, like I'm basically going to be at a break even point if I borrow the money. So I have a choice of either cashing in investments and putting it into this rental property, or what I wanted to do was get a mortgage on it and just cash flow above the mortgage. But unfortunately, again, building materials and interest rate won't allow me to do it the second way, and I've been reluctant to cash out money and um, cash out investments to make the property happen. So I've been kind of just on a holding pattern with that. And I'm not sure if I'm going to continue or not. I'm still kind of debating. Every time I get the property tax bill for that empty lot, though, it makes me feel like I need to start. And then I talk myself into circles, and I'm like, just wait another year. The interest rates will go down. Maybe something magical will happen with this building material. And because I got a quote to build a rental house on that property, and it doubled after COVID.
Wow.
The cost literally doubled it. And I don't know if it's like that everywhere, but in Hawaii, yeah, the cost of building basically doubled post COVID. So it doesn't pencil anymore.
Yeah.
So we'll see. I might hang on to the lot and maybe build something later, but for now, I think I'm just gonna regret it every time I get that property tax bill.
Could you sell it for a nice profit, just the vacant lot?
I could, and I've thought about that too. I thought about that, and then dumping that money into the market, into FCHD or into one of my mutual funds. But I like the option of having to build, so I'm kind of just been on a holding pattern, to be honest with you. I'm doing pretty good in all the other areas, so I'm kind of just keeping options open when it comes to that.
Yeah, makes sense. So the money that you have in the market, you said you kind of got started later. When do you think you made your first investment into the market?
I remember it was in a Vanguard Index 500 fund back in the day when that was super, and it still is super popular, I guess. But I was probably in my mid 30s, somewhere in my 30s, but I would have to guess around my mid 30s when I made my first investment. It was just a few $1,000s in there, and then I started an IRA, of course, and that's pretty much all I did for a
Wow.
while until I, got more adventurous and I started, dabbling in stocks. And I have a little bit spread out between different bond funds and Sunrise and Worthy Bonds and a whole bunch of nonsense, crypto. But for me, all of that put together, all the stuff I consider quote unquote nonsense is probably less than 10% of my portfolio. 90% of it is, like I said, split pretty 50-50 between those bedrock stock market stuff and the rental properties.
Did you have any debt that you had accumulated early on in your 20s that you were paying off, or was it just more, hey, I've got kids that are young and I've got to kind of provide for the family at this point and not thinking about investments in the future?
Yeah. Yeah, the second one. So I got married pretty young, like I said, had kids, so that was the focus. I wasn't really thinking about the future like most people in their 20s, or at least back then. I think it's a little better now, but back then, I didn't have, none of my friends in their 20s were thinking about retirement. We were just living life. And then I started, I think my brother actually, who's 4 years older than me, is the first one who started talking to me about it. And that started me down the path of just researching. I read my first book, which was like a lot of people, Rich Dad, Poor Dad. And once I read that book, it kind of changed my concept of money and opened up my idea or my mind to different ideas as far as money. So yeah, it all started from there.
That's cool. So let's shift gears a little bit. Living in a high cost of living area, or what most would consider a high cost of living area, I'd like to kind of touch on that a little bit as it relates to just cost of living. You've lived on all sorts of different islands out there in Hawaii, which have various costs of living. I mean, we know some people have second and third homes out there. How have you been able to navigate kind of living in a high cost of living area like that, still accumulating some real estate while also making, investments, for retirement and in the future?
Yeah. I think it's a mix of discipline and luck, to be honest with you. Like I said, the properties I acquired is not something that was on the market that was available for everyone. And then discipline of, being able to work 7 days a week for years to get those properties off the ground. A lot of people, wouldn't make that sacrifice. I think everybody'd want to have a couple of rental properties in their portfolio, but not everybody wants to work 7 days a week for a few years to make it happen. So that's a short version of, I think, how people can make it happen regardless of the area they live in. Hawaii is extremely high cost of living. Um, it makes it a lot more challenging. Probably why it took me as long as it did to get to the point I'm at. I'm in my early 50s. It probably would have been a lot quicker living in a different part of the country. And I say like it's a mix of discipline and good luck. And I think I've been very blessed along my life and my journey, but I have been very unlucky as far as cost of living areas that I've lived because I lived on the Big Island, which is super expensive, Maui, which is probably more expensive, Oahu and Kauai, which are all ridiculous. And then the only time I lived in the mainland, we call the continent of the U.S. in Hawaii, we call it the mainland. But the only time I lived in the mainland was in Southern California in Orange County, which is super high cost of living too. So everywhere I've gone, I've had to experience high cost of living, and I didn't really. I always knew it because I read and I understand numbers, but I didn't really experience it until recently. I went to the Philippines, and the disparity between cost of living of where I'm at and where they are is shocking to me. And yeah, just how far money goes when in different areas yeah, it's a huge challenge here, but it's not something that you can't overcome.
Yeah, it's a different sunshine tax. But on the other hand, I'm curious to ask you, and I really haven't touched on this a lot on the podcast, but do you think living, granted, you grew up there, so it's probably a home, but do you think living where most people, fantasize about vacationing, pretty frequently or going to Hawaii whether it's spring break or Christmas, I mean, your weather is absolutely spectacular year round. You have an enormous amount of, especially on the Big Island, activities with essentially you got oceans surrounding you, you've got mountains, volcanoes, etc., all sorts of different
Mhm.
things. I mean, from a mental health standpoint and all the other areas of your life that aren't necessarily financial, do you think living there has, allowed you to kind of get to where you are financially in a way as well, because you haven't had this desire to, go vacation, you're vacationing in your backyard every day, basically?
I've never thought about it like that, but that's a great point. I've seen a cliche or a meme about how a lot of people live their life where they live 50 weeks out of the year to save up enough to have great vacation for 2 weeks out of the year. And listening to your question, what you just said kind of makes me think a little bit that my life is actually set up the opposite of that. I actually don't travel a lot. My trip to the Philippines that I was talking to you about was only a few months ago, and it was my first trip outside of the country. Um, Other than short runs across the border in Tijuana when I lived in Southern California, but it was my first real international trip. And a lot of people ask me why I don't travel more, and it's just because of what you said. Like I have everything here. I can in one day I can drive to the Kona side and be on the most beautiful white sand beach, and then I can drive halfway across the island and be in the mountains and play in the snow on Mauna Kea, and then I can drive down to the east side of the island where I live and go watch a volcano erupt. So in one day, I can have a white sand beach, play in the snow, and see a volcano all in the same day. And it's pretty unique to where I live. Like you said, the weather's great. It's just an amazing place to live. So even though it is presents some challenges financially and maybe reaching goals because of the cost of living, maybe yeah, like you said, it doesn't create that wanderlust that most people have because I have all of these things in my life every day. I have great weather, I have beaches, I have volcanoes, I have rainforests, I have everything I need here already. So it allows me to funnel a lot of money into investments and drive that growth.
Yeah, and so much of what you just mentioned, you don't have to necessarily go. I mean, I get that you're paying to live there, but you don't have to go
Mhm.
pay to like be at the white sand beach, another $100 a ticket or $200 a ticket or whatever.
Yep.
Like it's there. It's like public, accessible. Like And then same thing with going
Yeah.
in, to the mountains, to the jungle, everything. It's that sunshine tax, I guess some people call it in California, and I guess it extends to Hawaii. But you're not having to repay for those kinds of things from an entertainment standpoint. It's all accessible.
Yeah, yeah, and then another big hobby of mine is jiu-jitsu, and here in Hawaii, in the state of Hawaii, and especially on the Big Island, we have a huge jiu-jitsu scene, huge community. It's one of the best places for jiu-jitsu that I've been. I've been to other islands and states and for competitions and whatnot, and yeah, the level here is good. The vibe here is good. It's been a blessing.
And the food's phenomenal. So you don't actually have, big desires to go get any of that anywhere else either, I'm sure.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. There's the food's great here too. Yeah, there's really not a lot I can complain about other than, like you said, the sunshine tax is kind of steep, but yeah, I think it's worth it. I've had opportunities to move away, and I've always convinced myself to stay, in spite of that. So
Yeah.
I think it's worth it.
So early 50s at this point, where do you go from here? Do you have kind of a target net worth? Are you thinking about what retirement may look like down the road? I know we touched on the property thing, but just kind of where's your mind at, at this point? Kids are out of the house, I'm assuming.
Yep, yep. Yeah, kids are out of the house. Yeah, for me, it's just kind of I'm at a stage now where I just keep moving the goalposts. Like I remember when my first goal was just to become a quote unquote millionaire, the net worth millionaire. And when I got that, I remember as soon as I got it, I was happy and patted myself on the back. And it's kind of a personal thing. Like I don't, no one knows about it. It's not something that you post on Facebook or Instagram or anything like that. But it was a personal goal. I was proud of that. And then, but I remember as soon as I got it, I just set another goal for okay, I want to get the 2.0 level so I can be a quote unquote multimillionaire. And then once I got that, I'm like, huh. Then I didn't really have another goal as far as net worth, so that kind of stopped. Obviously, I want to build the biggest pile of money as possible, just because I'm competitive with myself, competitive in general, but especially with myself. And but yeah, I'm to be honest with you, I don't really have any set goals right now. I enjoy what I do as far as work, so I don't feel the need to stop working. I do like being busy. I feel my day; it's pretty packed. And for me, like the worst thing, for me personally, the worst thing is being bored. So I pack my day with a lot of things, and to be honest, um, I'm a little unsure about what to do next. But I'm happy with where I'm at now, and so I'm still in the accumulation stage of my financial journey, and we'll see what happens in the next few years. But for now, I think I'm just going to keep staying the course.
Do you think about retirement at all?
I do, but like I said, I've been blessed enough to build a life that I really enjoy. So I wake up every morning, I go to the gym, work out at the gym, which I really enjoy. And then I come to work at my day job. I run a trucking company here in Hilo. I'm a general manager for a trucking company, and I enjoy doing that. It has just a nice mix of comfort and fires to put out that keep me, stimulated and yet comfortable at the same time. And I have a great team. I have about 40 employees that I manage, and it's just a small company, but it's a really tight knit team, almost like a second family. So I like that. And then in the afternoons, I teach jujitsu for a few hours, and then I train, personally myself after that. And then it's bedtime, and I do that pretty much every day, and use the weekends to recharge and kind of relax and do fun stuff. But for the most part, like I don't know what retirement would look like, what I would do different, because I still enjoy the work. So at some point, if I get to a point where work becomes work, then I might look at retiring. But for now, I kind of like the setup that I built, and the side effect of it is, this financial flexibility or cushion I have, or independence that I have. And I could stop working if I wanted to, but right now I don't really need to want to, I should say.
Yeah, that's fair. Have you been in trucking all your life?
For the most part, I got into it when I was a little kid because my parents started a trucking company when back in the 70s, and they were like a small owner operated company, so I was kind of born into it. And then I've done other things, but yeah, I've kind of always been in logistics and trucking. And so I've been with this current company for almost going on 2 decades now. Great company. It's the largest trucking or logistics company in the state. So I've had different positions around the state. I've done like a regional manager thing, a vice president thing, and now I'm just a general manager of one small division of the company. And it's just like I said, it's been a real sweet spot for me. I've been really blessed to get it.
That's cool. That's awesome. Well, Lance,
Yeah.
let's wrap up with some rapid fire questions. What's the most expensive pair of pants or shoes that you purchased?
Pair of pants or shoes. I'm not a clothing guy, so the shoes would probably be some sort of, Nike trainer shoe that I wear. I don't know the name of it, but it'd probably be close to like $150. And yeah, we're super casual here in the island, so I'm dressed like in flats and a polo shirt, and that's pretty much dressed up. So
Yeah, you got
clothing probably
island
isn't.
time, and island wear, right?
Yeah, one of the blessings is I can wear shorts and a t-shirt year round here and be comfortable, whether it's winter or summer. So getting dressed up is usually just for weddings and funerals.
Yeah, you don't have to rub that in. I
Yeah.
probably should ask, what's the most money you've spent on your hobbies, particularly jiu-jitsu, but y-
Probably jujitsu, like trips. I take a lot of the traveling I do is for jujitsu, so I compete a lot. I've traveled a bunch of different places to compete. So every time that's the one thing when you're flying from Hawaii, it's it's just as expensive as flying to Hawaii. So a trip to even someplace close like California, a week long trip in California with hotel, flights, rent a car, food, we're talking $3,000 to $5,000 just to take a week to just do a competition.
yeah,
So I try to compete about 6 times a year. I'm still pretty active on the competitive circuit. So 6 times a year, at that rate, I guess it kind of adds up. But I do have a trip. Actually, the most expensive thing that I purchased besides investments and my primary residence would be I'm 5 days away from taking a trip to Colombia to do some stem cell treatments. So I don't know if you were familiar, but basically it's an anti-aging process where they inject you with millions and millions of stem cells, and they're supposed to help healing and things like tendonitis, inflammation. Kind of just rewind the clock, basically. So I'm doing that, and that was the trip to Colombia with the treatment was $25,000. So that's probably the most expensive thing I've purchased. That just like I said, I'm 5 days away from the trip. Super excited about it.
cool. Yeah, Colombia's it's a very cool and underrated place in my opinion. I don't feel like a lot of people talk about it, but I went there
Yeah,
last year.
I'm
Had a
not.
lot of fun.
I'm not. I'm not looking forward to the 19 hours it's going to take me to get there from Hawaii. But
It's a long trip.
once I get there, I think it'll be good. But yeah, it kind of splurged on that treatment, and I hope it helps some of the aching joints I have from all the jiu-jitsu I've been doing.
Yeah, for sure. What's the most expensive car that you purchased?
Let's see, probably what I drive now. I drive a 2020 Toyota Tacoma that I bought brand new. It was probably about $40,000, maybe. That's probably it. Yeah,
It's a very Hawaii
pretty
car. Get your
modest.
surfboards on there in the back and haul and tow anything
Yeah,
around, but you're small enough to park wherever you need to, right?
exactly. Yeah, it's a perfect fit for me. I can throw rubbish in the back and I can still, fit it in a normal parking space.
Yep.
So it works out perfect for me.
What about the most expensive meal out?
Oh, geez. Yeah, I have splurged on some expensive meals out, especially when we travel. Like, I remember having some pretty expensive meals on Oahu and over in Vegas. Remember we had a pretty nice one at I don't remember the name of the restaurant, but it was in Vegas, and it was enough where I got the bill and I started questioning life decisions. Like at the time, I was like, I'm gonna splurge and this is gonna be great. And every bite was amazing and I enjoyed everything until I got the checkbook and I opened it. I'm like, I don't know if this was a good idea. But at that point it was already in the books.
You
But
remember how much it was?
yeah, I think it was just two of us and I think it was almost 500 bucks.
Okay. All right. Yeah, that'll do it.
Yeah.
That'll do it.
Yeah. Yeah.
With steaks or sushi or
Yeah,
okay.
steaks. Yeah, had some beef.
All right.
It's good stuff.
Awesome. What's a key lesson that you learned from childhood?
That the hard work is probably can probably overcome more than people think it can. So I think a lot of people suffer from this mentality of I didn't get a break or I didn't get the best possible hand, and they use it as a reason to try less. And for me, I think it's the opposite should be true. If you get dealt a bad hand, it should be a signal to you that you have to try harder. And I think if you do put in the work and you do have dedication, like I said earlier, if you have a goal and you create a plan and you have the dedication and the work ethic to follow that plan relentlessly no matter what, then more times than not you'll reach that goal. And I think a lot of people don't have that mentality. They talk themselves out of goals. Like everybody wants certain things, but not everybody has the ability or the dedication to follow the plan and actually make it happen. And I just think like if you have work ethic, and something that my I learned from my parents is when they started their business and they worked super hard, you do have to sacrifice some things for sure, but if you work hard, there's really no telling what you can accomplish.
Did you do anything to celebrate becoming a millionaire, or maybe when you hit the second?
No, I didn't actually. Like I said, I'm pretty private. Like most of my family and friends, other than my brother, don't even know my net worth. Like I live a pretty modest life. Like my primary residence is what I think most people would consider a nice house, but it's not a mansion or it's not something that you would walk in and be, oh, this guy's a millionaire. It's a upper middle class home. And, some people may or may not be aware of my rental properties, but nobody's aware of my investments, how much I have in my brokerage account and my 401k. So I would say 99% of the people I know don't even know that I'm a millionaire. And so yeah, I didn't celebrate it as public or anything, but it's definitely something that's brought me a lot of personal satisfaction. I'm a very goal-oriented person. And so making those goals, creating the plan was fun. Following the plan, reaching the goal was just a huge accomplishment for me personally. But no, 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 no big celebration or party or anything like that. Just a pat on the back and a new goal.
Okay, cool. What's the craziest thing you've ever done to earn money?
This is a family podcast, so let's see. Um, I'll just say gambling. I don't know. Nothing crazy. Nothing crazy. Let's just say no comment. How's that?
Oh boy. Okay, I got you. Oh man, that's great. Uh,
Yeah.
what's the dumbest thing you've ever wasted money on?
So many things. Me and my brother, we didn't have a lot, but we grew up and we used to pull our money together and we would go to the comic book store and we'd buy comic books and we'd share them. Like I would buy, a couple books that I liked, he'd buy a couple books he liked, and we'd read our books and then swap. So we grew up reading comic books. It was a fun time. As one of my happiest or fondest memories, I should say, of my childhood. And so but I got rid of all my comic books like most people do as they get older. And so when I got older, not recent, maybe about a decade ago, I decided to like try to replace some of those books that I had when I was younger. And as you might imagine, those books from 40 years ago are super expensive. So I bought a bunch of them. I probably spent in one year, I mean, a bunch of different books, but probably spent ten to $20,000 on comic books. And they brought me a lot of joy because of the nostalgia feel, but I had to stop because basically what I was doing is I was buying these books that I used to have as a kid for crazy amounts of money, and then I would put them in, plastic bags and whatnot, like how people store them, and then I put them in a box in my closet. So I realized after a while of doing this, I'm like taking $1,000, that I could be investing or growing, and I'm putting it basically in a plastic bag into a box and sticking it in the closet. And so I had to kind of check myself to be. I would never do this with cash. I'd never take $1,000 cash, put it in a bag, and put it in the closet. But I'm effectively doing that by buying this comic book just for nostalgia's sake and putting it in the closet. And so even though I had brought me some joy to purchase them and to hold them in my hand and bring back those memories, like once I put them in the box, I never really look at them again. So I was amassing this big collection of childhood nostalgia, and I realized, okay, it's kind of a waste of money. So I kind of decided, okay, maybe one day when I get older and nostalgia hits me again, I'll break the box out and open it up, and my brother and I will look at them and remember when we were, 10 years old and used to read Spider-Man and all that stuff. And yeah,
I'm
that's
sure
probably
some of
the
those have
what I
aged
would consider dumbest thing.
aged well and are probably worth something. I mean, people go crazy over that kind of stuff.
Yeah, I think there you can get lucky with that depending on condition and rarity. But for me, like I would never give anyone, like say listening, advice to take your life savings and invest it into comic books. I think there's a lot of better investment vehicles
Yeah.
than comic books. So yeah, it's got to be something that you do for fun and not for financial gain.
Has anything changed financially from a habit standpoint since you became a millionaire or multimillionaire? Do you spend more in one area? I mean, obviously you stopped working 7 days a week, but once you got those rental
Mhm.
properties, but anything else that's drastically changed or shifted for you?
No, not at this time. I'm still kind of like I said, staying the course. I haven't really altered anything as far as spending or investing. I've had the same plan that's worked really well for me, kind of splitting these things up into different vehicles that we talked about. And yeah, I'm just trying to amass the biggest pile of money I can. And eventually when I get tired of working and I want to, change course in life, I'll have the financial ability to do so. But for now, I'm just staying the course.
What's something that you've spent way too much money on, but you don't regret?
Ooh, that's a good question. Um, Probably those trips for competition. I'm a very competitive person, and I'm really happy I found Jiu-Jitsu as a sport because it's a sport that you can play and compete at pretty much, your whole life until your body gives out. But the competitions give you motivation to train and for me to work out and to eat healthy and just kind of maintain a healthy lifestyle, which is, great side effects as far as life, having all of those things in your life, but also it kind of scratches that competitive itch I have. And so I've spent probably looking back, I've done countless competitions, and most of them aren't on the island, so we have to fly to compete. So if I added up all the money, I probably regret it. But without adding it all up, it's a lot of money, and I don't regret it.
Nice.
But don't make me do the math because that might change my answer.
You probably spent for sure well over 6 figures on it, yeah?
I would think so, yeah,
Yeah,
for
that's
sure.
cool.
Yeah. Yeah. See, now you're gonna make me change my
No,
answer.
no, no. I think
I'm
it's great. I mean,
gonna
I literally just did a recording for another show today or whatever, a few days ago, whatever it was. Really kind of diving into spending money on hobbies and how I personally feel like people should do more of that, especially earlier in their life, because a lot of people wait to do some things that maybe they
Yep,
wanted to do later, and there's certain aspects of hitting timing right. Like I'm sure with jujitsu, you can start feeling like your body. I mean, it's a sport you can probably do for a very long time, but your body's not what it was when it was 30 to do some of those things.
right,
And
right.
you lose a little bit, a step or some strength or
Yep,
whatever, and it, sometimes you can't just like recreate that. And then you never know what happens, what could happen with injuries too.
yep, yep. You're 100% right. I think a lot of people, especially in the financial independence community, they're always, or maybe overly focused, I should say, on the future, and they forget that life is happening today. So it's about finding balance in, like you said, spending not just money, but time on things you enjoy, hobbies you enjoy today. Because, like the old cliche says, tomorrow is never promised. So a lot of people suffer and sacrifice for the future. And then, like you said, you never know what's going to happen with your health or, these tariffs or what. It could change
It's
everything.
true.
So you don't want to, you know, be too far on either side of that line. You want to kind of find balance where you are saving and investing and making smart financial decisions for the future, but you're also living life and doing things you enjoy and spending money on things that you enjoy that bring you joy. And if you can do that, then you're winning no matter what your net worth says.
For sure. What's a closely held belief that you once had that you recently changed your mind on?
That's a good one. I'd have to. I'm thinking about it. Closely held belief. I recently changed my mind on. Huh. Yeah, sorry, bro. I don't have an answer for that one. I can't think of anything. Hate to say it, but pass. Next question.
Maybe it's spending,
Can I phone a friend?
yeah,
I don't know. I
maybe
don't
it's
have one
spending
for that.
25 grand to go to another country to do a stem cell deal. Like,
Well, Well,
Think
if
about
you
that
ask
20 years
me,
ago, right?
yeah, well, that's true. That's true for sure. It's something definitely as I get older, I think spending more money on health is becoming more of a reality. And even the way I work out, I used to be 100% into performance and aesthetics, driven by probably a mix of low self-esteem and vanity. But as I get older, I realize like, your body's it only can hold up for so long, redlining it. So you gotta understand that exercise doesn't always have to be something where you're wrecking your body to drive the most possible performance. Like sometimes you just have to move around to keep you from, going backwards. And so I guess, yeah, my health and fitness journey has kind of changed, or my outlook has kind of changed. It's kind of more focused on recovery and movement and kind of stuff, as opposed to just picking up the heaviest possible thing every day.
And just for our listeners, he still looks like he can pick up the heaviest possible thing out there, even at 52 years old. So
Yeah,
aged well, I'm
yeah,
sure.
thanks.
Any last piece of advice
Appreciate
for
that.
somebody who's just starting out on their journey?
I would say never think that you've learned everything that you need to learn. Like there's so much information out there. It's like with jujitsu, like I've been doing for a decade and a half. I've competed at super high levels. I've won tons of tournaments, and I still learn every day. I still try to get better every day, and it's the same way with your finances or anything else. Like I think there's so much information out there now, and technology allows us so much, so easy allows that information to be so easily accessed that it's kind of a shame if people don't take advantage of that. So for me, my biggest advice would be, like I said, just have a constant thirst for knowledge, in whatever direction, whether that's a hobby or a sport or financial or work. I mean, just continue to seek knowledge, and it's out there. You just have to be willing to go get it.
Awesome. That's Lance, the net worth of $2.1 million. Thanks for the show today.
Appreciate it. Thank you for having me.
Thanks for listening to the Millionaires Unveiled podcast with Jace Mattinson. For more stories, investment opportunities, and information, check out our website, millionairesunveiled.com. See you next time when you'll hear from another everyday millionaire.